Hello, it's Fabian with you once again for another video tutorial on the Sick Bike Parts Shift Kit. Today we'll be installing a dual range sprocket stack system on the White Industries heavy duty freewheel bearing. The reason why you would want a dual range system is if you're climbing steep hills such as in an alpine environment or you're towing a lot of weight. Without further ado, we will assemble the stack. You take your bearing. You will then take your 48 tooth optional sprocket or your 44 tooth sprocket, and you will ensure that the recessed edges of both the 48 tooth and the 40 tooth or the standard 36 tooth face each other. In this case, I'm using the optional 48 tooth sprocket, which gives me more hill climbing power. You will then take the sprocket, you will place it on the front face of the freewheel bearing system. In my case, because I'm using a dual range sprocket stack, the sprocket widths in total are wider, so you'll need longer bolts. These are M5 by 40mm button head cap screws, and they've been filed down or ground down to 34mm so they'll clear my frame. Next thing we have to do is to space out the next largest sprocket so that you can have proper indexing on the front derailleur between the largest sprocket and the smallest optional 24 tooth sprocket from Sick Bike Parts. I found that a very efficient method of spacing things out so that the largest sprocket that's driving the rear cassette and the largest sprocket that's being powered from the jack shaft is to use two optional sprockets. In this case, I'm using two 24 tooth sprockets. And they'll go on like so. Next part of the process is to install the 40 tooth or your standard 36 tooth sprocket over the top of the 24 tooth sprockets if you choose to use them in spaces. You'll end up having a system where the largest sprocket is pretty much flush with the back face of the freewheel bearing. Okay, so now you effectively have the largest space possible between the two chains because the recesses are facing each other. Next part of the process is to ensure that the 30 tooth sprocket, shown here with its own spaces, is to ensure the 30 tooth sprocket has some support behind it when it goes onto the 40 tooth sprocket or your standard 36 tooth sprocket. The reason why we use the 30 tooth spacer is effectively will act as a shift ramp, allowing the chain to jump from the 24 tooth sprocket up to the 36 or the optional 40 tooth sprocket. It's important to ensure that your spacers are the same width. So in this case, the spacers that I needed, or the space I needed to create, was around sort of 2.7, 2.8 millimeters. And this 2.75, 2.79, 2.80, 2.74, 2.78. So I've matched up spaces so that they all work out to roughly the same width. If you do that, that means that your sprocket will not have a wobble on it, and that's fairly important. So the spacers or the washers go on. Like so. Next thing that we have to do is to install the dish sprocket with the dish facing up. You can see there's the dish. That face will go against the spacers or the washers. Okay. Right, so now you can see the effective shift ramp system that we've created. You have the dish. Okay. Next part of the process is to have spacers placed in between the 32 or the 30-tooth dish sprocket and the 24-tooth sprocket, which will be our low range gear. Again, you have to match up spacers so that there's no wobble in the sprocket. 3.1, 3.19, 3.17, 3.20, 106, 3.20, 6,